I've been drawing as long as I can remember, really. Obviously I was an artist first, then I became a wildlife artist, well I became a zoological illustrator, then a wildlife artist, and one thing led to another. It changed my opinions of the way the world was, which made me realise that there was a bigger picture here. It was pointless me just being a wildlife artist, drawing from nature all the time and not putting anything back. I realised I had a duty, it was my duty almost, to put something back into the wild and to do what I could, at least for education purposes, to tell the people about what was going on from a conservation point of view. The thing is, because obviously I had some kind of a gift or something towards drawing and whatever, I realised that it gathered me quite a bit of attention. So people came and said, oh wow, that's fantastic. So the more I got of that, the more I liked the attention, the more I did it, the better I got. So it's kind of like a self-fulfilling dream really. And because I always loved animals, the two things just merged together.
I was kind of so wrapped up in living in my own little world, I didn't realise what was out there. It wasn't until I got to travel to the Far East that I realised that there was so much more on offer to me. It was like opening up Pandora's box in many respects, but it was a baptism of fire with my first real experience of when I stayed working with my father, who was working at the time in the Cambodian refugee camps, the overspill from the Khmer Rouge regime of the killing fields. And seeing that completely opened my eyes to how other people live, and the fact that that we live in a little bubble sometimes. And I had my first real chance of getting involved with nature, my first real rainforest experience, which planted the seeds for me of where I am now. I remember just sitting there waiting for the sun to come up, and it was just the most incredible experience as everything came to life around me, all the noises. But what we were there for was to see the chorus of the gibbons as they awoke and started swinging through the trees from a distance. And it was just magical. And I fell in love with rainforest and jungle, and I've never looked back since.
My relationship with David began when he volunteered to come to Nepal on an expedition investigating the giant elephants that we discovered there some years before. And I was rather interested in meeting him because his work is certainly quite outstanding. I've always rather liked having an artist on an expedition because I feel that they, in some ways, express the whole character of the animal in a better way than perhaps cameras do.
Having the opportunity to travel with Colonel Blashford's snail was something I never thought would happen to me, but when it did, it was absolutely incredible. The Colonel's always been a man I've had great admiration for. He's sort of one of the last great explorers who explores for the specific reason that he's got a mission, a scientific mission or a purpose for his travelling.
David's a very kind, compatible sort of chap. And in an expedition, when you've got a wide variety of people with different interests, it's absolutely essential that you have people who can get on together. And David certainly fitted in very well with the team. He's got wide knowledge too. He's travelled a lot and can talk about the different areas and different experiences he had. And quite clearly, he loves animals. And I think that is one of the great attractions of a wildlife artist. They must have an affinity with the animals, and if you love them, you probably draw better pictures of them.
It's better to have a mission in mind whenever I travel because it can be quite aimless otherwise. I mean, normally I always go with a target species to draw or a target environment to experience. It started during my training when I was working specifically with sort of natural history, zoological illustration, because we were seeing so much natural history and I particularly was so involved with the world of herpetology. I was seeing so much death and destruction. It was then that I realised that, do I just want to keep taking from this? Do I just want to just observe it, or do I want to document it and try and do something about it? I've always had an obsession with crocodiles since I was a child, probably because of their resemblance to dinosaurs. So when I had my first opportunity to see crocodiles in the wild, it was just like a dream come true. I remember travelling to this village in West Africa where they told me they had a pit of crocodiles, and if I liked I could go in with the crocodiles because they were all friendly. And I remember going down there and it was just getting up close and personal with these crocodiles. It was just incredible for me. I mean, to other people it might seem a bit strange, but crocodiles' roars hold some kind of magic for me. And they're just beautiful animals to draw as well. They're perfection. They've been on the planet longer than any other creature, you know, pretty much. So, you know, there's a lot to be said for their design.
I think it was David's love of reptiles that brought me and him together, with certainly with me and my involvement with crocodiles in the UK. He actually had a project for a client that he was working on, and he wanted to come and draw an alligator. So he came to me and we met, and he bought some of his work. I'd heard of him before. But seeing his work was just, it really made me want to work with him.
I got to know about Sean and his crocodiles via my cousin, and I was commissioned at the time to draw a specific picture of a specific species. You know, I rang Sean up and said, could I possibly come up and would you be able to help me out with this? And he bent over backwards for me.
So he had this project for an alligator that he wanted to do. So he used one of our female Chinese alligators that we had at the time. David then came and took lots of photos of the animal that he was going to draw, and he then went away and spent the next year. I didn't hear anything from him, and it was about 18 months later before he finally sent me a little thumbnail of the image. He finally finished it. In that time, the alligator had actually died. He turned up here 2 weeks later with a copy of this alligator in a frame, and it almost brought a tear to my eye seeing this image, because it was the crocodile, the alligator that I'd had. She had scars from previous encounters with a different male. She had a scar on her jaw, and he had the detail of this scar just perfectly. You could instantly recognisable of that specific animal. David's going to supply us with copies of that image. The proceeds that we raise from the sales will be donated to the Chinese Alligator Fund, which is the only conservation project that runs for that species. We've combated so many aspects of crocodile conservation just with that one drawing that he spent so long doing.
I've been incredibly lucky to be supported by some fantastic individuals over the years who bought my work, and some of the people that collect my work. Without them, there's no way I could do what I do. They've kept me going through through many a hard time and whatever.
I think as far as art's concerned, David is very much a perfectionist. There's a lot of difference between wildlife artists who really know their subject and those who just paint or draw wildlife. And I think David's right at the top of his profession. And the reason I think he's there is because he spends so much time actually researching the creature that he wants to draw. I've collected his work sort of continuously over the last few years. His work is as near perfection invariably as you can get. I also love his work because he tends to do quirky animals. He doesn't just do the ones that are always commercially going to sell. You never know at an exhibition what you're going to see. He can have found a creature which no other artist has probably drawn, and yet he's got this superb representation of it. And that I absolutely love, the fact that it's something totally different.
I mean, for any artist to have a sponsor or to have a true supporter of their work, it's invaluable, and those people, I can't thank them enough. Art has changed massively, absolutely massively since I started, just even over a period of 20 years. I'm not sure all of it's been for the better. I will always look back at the great masters and be inspired by Rembrandt and Rubens and all of the other people that came before. I mean, you can never get enough from those great artists, but there's always plenty of new artists around as well to take inspiration from, like Gottfried Hellman, the German artist, who's got master of textures and detail. That is almost the focus of my art in many respects. I mean, this is why I like drawing nature and like drawing wildlife so much, is because every single picture is different. Every fur texture is different. There is no one style or technique for fur, whereas you have a very coarse hair on an ape, you have a very soft, dense fur on something like an Amur leopard, you know, because each animal's fur is designed for its own unique environment. So textures, to me, is the key. That's what keeps me inspired and it keeps me interested, it does. You do need drive and you do need motivation, and artists, if you've got a creative leaning, if that's the way your mind works, artists need motivation. It's a labour of love. You've got to love what you do, and you 9 times out of 10 you probably won't be rewarded for that. I mean, I draw my creativity from nature, because I believe nature is creativity in its purest form. It is creation, and you couldn't have anything purer than that. And through my art and my other position as a conservationist, I am trying to conserve nature and stop the final product of a world without creativity, which would be if nature disappeared and if we ended up with barren landscapes, would become a desert of creativity in many respects for me. My creativity comes from what I draw. The two things feed each other. That's what drives me along. I'd like to give some sort of romantic opinion about being an artist and look back and reflect upon it as it was for artists of years gone by, but to be honest with you, I don't think it is anything like that in this day and age, particularly in the world we live in at the moment. It's a tough life being an artist, and it's not for everybody, it isn't. I'm fortunate to do it, and I think as much as I'm blessed with having not really a gift, but the ability to do what I do from a lifetime of doing it, sometimes it can be as much a stone around my neck as it can be a godsend. I prefer to be remembered for making a difference through conservation or through drawing attention to the depletion of the rainforest than any of my pictures will ever do. The art thing, fair enough, yeah, but I'm not as bothered about that. I mean, I'm more bothered about for generations to come. My worst nightmare would be that my sons will grow up and not be able to travel and see the things that I've seen in the world because they're not there anymore. If I can do something to help preserve that for generations to come, then that is what I would like to be remembered for. I mean, my feeling is if I draw one pretty picture that one person looks at and thinks, wow, that's great, and it draws their attention to the conservation of that species, then activates them to do something about it, then that's a success. That's all I need to do.